Howdy, folks. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about current conversations we're having between each other and with our children regarding the death of Charlie Kirk. It's a tragic event, unlike anything I've ever lived through. It's historical. It's devastating. And now that our kids are a little bit older, I feel like we're having to... We can't hide, not that we've tried to actively hide different things from them. They're just far more aware of things that are happening when Katie and I are talking about them. And so there's a couple things that we're going to point out that we're sharing with our kids. And I'd love to just hear in the comment section, if you guys watch on YouTube, how it is you're talking to your children about such events, or really this event in particular. And anyways, thanks for listening. We'll get this thing rolling.
The Now That We're a Family podcast.
Yeah, something I also think that you want that this episode's going to be about are some things that you want the kids to take away from Charlie Kirk in his life specifically.
Absolutely. Right. I am all for my children having heroes like Charlie Kirk. I think our children are going to inevitably, I think we are going to inevitably have human heroes or role models or people that we look to. And I think that so often we will almost put that down and say, well, hey, you just need to look to Jesus. And it's never less than looking to Jesus, the one perfect, the perfect man, right? The God man. And he is, we look unto Jesus, the author and the finisher of our faith. And so we never don't look to Jesus, but in looking to Jesus, he has given us human role models, human influences. He put us in community with humans. He put us in a world that is full of humans. He put us in a church that is, his bride that is full of humans. And it is not just inevitable. I think it's right that we would have human role models and heroes. And I think that you can do that without maybe like this fear of idolatry or of worshiping people. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but I do feel like sometimes we can almost diminish some humans to a fault. It's like, okay, we know every human is not Jesus, right? Other than Jesus. And so we don't need to have all these disclaimers. And so, with the passing of Charlie Kirk, I think it's a great time to acknowledge the heroic and admirable traits that in a lot of ways led to his death, and that we would want our children to emulate and that we would want them to find inspiration from. And so, that is, even though we're talking about this in real time, I think there are some things that, and I know that this is, many of our listeners maybe feel like this is all they've heard about for the last week, right? And I think rightly so. It is historical. We are not people. If you listen to our podcast, we do not talk about current affairs. Like, we are very out of tune 99% of the time with what's happening politically, I think culturally, or in our society, pop culture. I don't think we are very in tune to what's going on. And so we don't comment on it. It's just, we're not aware of the 24-hour news cycle. We don't feel compelled to comment on it. And in fact, we actually don't want to. We don't want to be in tune with those things. And so even when this occurred, we were like, whoa, this is wild. And I think we already had a podcast recorded that was scheduled to go up the next day. And that's just always how we've done it. It's like we're always recording ahead of time. And that kind of keeps us from commenting on real-time things. And yet here we are multiple days removed from this. And it is, I think it's, if anything, it's the impact of his death has only been magnified, just amongst my in-person friends who I go to online. And I just think I don't think there's any way for me, I'm just speaking for myself, and that's just going to be a very, kind of anecdotal, personal processing episode for this. And I do hope that some parents can take things from it, because I'm going to make a point to point out some attributes that I don't think are spoken of very often regarding Charlie Kirk. I think that his faith and his boldness and his courage, while that cannot be overstated. And I want to certainly, praise those things. I want to speak more particularly about some like very specific things that I think stand out about the way he conducted himself and the way he lived his life that are an inspiration to me, and that I would want, to encourage my kids in as well.
Yeah, something that I think is so beautiful about the sadness of his passing is all of his work that the Lord's really using right now in a big way. And I think that happens often when someone passes in a tragic way. The Lord magnifies that person in their death. And I just think of that scripture, in losing your life, you find it. Charlie's with the Lord now, but for us here on earth, like, people are getting saved because of the work that he did here for Christ before he passed. And he's no longer here in body, but the Lord is still using this death to draw attention to all the work that he has done. And I think of that with our Savior Jesus when he was crucified, how all of a sudden people who hadn't looked before were looking. And it's crazy how, the Romans thought, and the Jews, everyone thought at the time, probably more the Jews than the Romans, hey, we're going to take out this key leader and we're going to smother everything he was promoting, right?
This movement.
Exactly, this movement. And instead, it just caught flame. And so I just think that's a beautiful thing. As believers, our lives, we don't see how the Lord's working behind the scenes. And while this is a devastating loss, and I still can't watch the video of his wife sharing and his 2 kids, I can't go there mentally right now. And I can't imagine her loss as a young wife. I just think it's so powerful what the Lord's doing on a big scale through Charlie's life and through his death.
I agree, Katie. And just in commenting on the last thing you said regarding you not being able to watch content around, his death. This has been an interesting thing, because that mentality has really been something that has kind of steered both your and our content consumption, meaning we feel very called to our marriage, to our children, to our local community. And then from there it goes out, right? Okay. Then we want to speak to the podcast, but we want to speak to the podcast regarding how those things are going, right? Our marriage and our parenting. And so I say that to say, a lot of times I'd say actually most of the time we willfully do not consume news that we feel like is actually emotionally challenging for us, because we really want to be present. And so when this happened, I thought it was going to be kind of this event with Charlie Kirk being assassinated. I thought it was going to be a similar order of events where I would get the information, and then I got to clock into being a dad and a husband, and a husband, and all these things. These are things that are most important, kind of like what you're saying. And I consumed a ton, of information those first couple days. And then we literally, we kind of went into our weekend and we unplugged the internet, and it was 2 full days. We kind of had an extended, longer than normal internet free period. And so I didn't consume a thing for 48 hours. And it just still was just so devastating to me, right? Like, it just was so, I could not shake the impact of this death. And so I'm not saying that, well, I'm saying that to say, yeah, I think you need to have discernment on when you need to just detach from internet. And we did that. And it probably was good for me to do that. But then there probably are going to come events where at some point you just, I guess, need to process it or acknowledge it. And I think that's different for each person. And I'm speaking.
I'm not saying I'm not processing or acknowledging this.
I'm not trying to preach to you.
Like it was.
Yeah, I think that this is why it's unique to me, is because I have totally been like, wow, see terrible news, like pray, and then try to be about the business the Lord has for me. Does that make sense? And this has been a unique thing for me. I'm speaking completely personally here, where I'm not saying that everybody needs to be, at the same level of emotion as me. But this is where I'm at and how I'm processing, if that makes any sense to you.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm really grateful that you don't allow yourself usually to get caught up with stuff that's going on in the world and have it be detrimental to your marriage and parenting.
I mean, even
things.
that in the beginning, I feel like I think people can take even earlier, maybe what was said to be like our heads are buried under rocks or whatever. We know of everything big going on in the world.
Yes.
Shootings, wars, every bad, big thing we definitely know about. And so that's not to say we have no concept of news or anything like that. I do think it's important as Christians to be aware. But like you said, the 24-hour news cycle, I'd say, and pop culture I stay largely out of.
Yes.
I don't know who's dating who or who's doing what over in that sphere of things, and I don't see that being beneficial to life. But on a big scale, I do feel responsible for our country to a certain extent. And so this would fall under that category of it's something that's very impactful for our nation as a whole.
Yeah. And you are right. We know headlines. And I think that when I say we don't go deeper than that, we usually don't.
I'm not going to watch every interview of a school shooting.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? But
Yes.
I'm going to know
Yes.
it happened.
Right.
Pray about it.
Yeah. So a couple things that I want to point out that I just don't think pointed out that often. Cause like I said, the truly admirable traits of Charlie Kirk are numerous and countless. And I think they should be spoken of for years and forever. Right. But things that really stood out to me personally, one is, and this actually led to being one of the more tragic things, but it's something that I've always admired about Charlie Kirk, and even more so now. And that is he actually incorporated his wife and children into what he was doing, not in a hey, my platform is my wife and my children, but here's a guy that was traveling year round, highly sought after for speaking and then for his own events as well. And he didn't do that. Everybody said, oh, he's a family first man. And I guess, that needs to be said. But the way that stood out to me is he had his family with him, physically. He would have his children with him. He would have his wife with him. And there's a lot of people that put their family first, but then just travel without their family, right? Or they say they put their family first and logistically are very comfortable spending numerous days away from their family, right? Or going on extended trips without their family. And something that stood out to me was how often his family would be with him, right? His wife would be on stage. And again, like I said, that ultimately led to this tragedy of his wife and his children witnessing his murder, firsthand. But to me, it's that's what he was about. He just did. He brought his children and his wife into the actual work that he was doing, along with him. But in a way where it's not like they were taking the heat that he would take, but it's just, he was just going to travel with them. He was going to be present with them. And I do think it is so easy to devalue the effect that a father's presence has with his children. And then also as a spouse with your spouse, we can say, oh, it's just a quick trip, or I have to travel for work, or you can justify it. Right. And I've seen numerous times pastors that I've looked up to or business leaders, as they become more popular and get more speaking engagements, or they come out with a book, or they're going to conferences, or they're just traveling more and more, they're more and more comfortable doing it without their wife and children. And that's just never been something that I've ever wanted to do. And it's very rare. It's very rare. And so seeing somebody that actually, when people say, oh, he was such a family first man, I'm he was that in a way that actually was really profound to me. He was that way logistically. He was that way very practically. He was that way in a very in the inconvenience of it. Mm-hmm. It's so much more convenient to just leave your children at home and to say, hey, give your wife a kiss and be hey, I'll be back in 4 days. Hey, I'll be back in a week. Hey, I'll be back. I just got to go do work, and I got to go make this stuff happen. And I don't want to live that way. And it was really inspiring to see someone that in the midst of all of his, opportunity for great purpose and great impact, he also wanted to bring the family along. That really stood out to me.
Yeah, that's crazy when I think about that. I actually didn't know that about him. And I think from a wife's perspective, I'm like, that says a lot about her too, and her wanting to back his mission, because I think logistically there comes a point when it's a lot easier to be like, hey, go do your thing. We'll see you when you come back, and they might have gotten to that stage,
Sure.
who knows? But I do think that that's very sweet that they're both putting that effort into their marriage. And I know for us, it's more just like, I don't want Elisha to have those. I don't want your career to be based around traveling,
Right.
Because I don't want to go traveling everywhere
Yeah.
either. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? If you had to do as many opportunities as he did, but that was, his thing that he was doing. She married into that, and it's really cool to see how they did work that as a team. As a
I
total
agree.
unit.
And that is something that I want to preach to my kid. And I'm not condemning any at all, or even judging any man that has to travel for work and leaves his family. Like, I get that is a very common thing, and depending on the industry you're in or the job that you're in, it's a thing that you have to do. I'm just speaking about it from like I want that to be something my sons consider, and my daughter. And I don't want them to just accept it as a given. Mm-hmm. I really want it to be one of those things where they are creative when it comes to their time with their children. And we talk, about some of those more crucial years than others. And I think that book, When Your Child's 6 to 12, and Charlie's kids weren't even in that age range, but are not in that age range. But I think it's so easy to think, when my kids are older, I'll spend more time with them, or we'll connect more. And oftentimes when those work opportunities that pull you away from the home are the greatest, like when you have the most of those opportunities, or oftentimes when your children are right in that age range. It's just weird how like those two things oftentimes collide, those two seasons collide. And you either have to get extremely creative and be willing to do inconvenient things, and being with your children and capitalizing on those opportunities, because I don't think it's wrong to capitalize on business opportunities or career opportunities. But I do think it is wrong to neglect your family in that season. And so I think that there are many Christian men that I look up to that, actually not many, I think there are a few Christian men that really do both well. They're like, okay, I'm not going to compromise on the family time, but yes, I want to excel over in this place.
This is an interview that's actually not up yet, but we did just interview Father Josiah, and he brought up, I think he was the one who brought up that career concept, where the concept of men working and providing for families has always been there, but career is a kind of a newer concept in terms of finding maybe more fulfillment and more identity and more of those things in what they're doing. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I think he spoke to that. I think it was a
to me.
separate conversation you and I were having around the career thing, but I think he spoke to. Do you think he was speaking to the career thing?
No, someone brought it up. It wasn't us.
It wasn't us?
No.
Okay. Yeah.
Like I heard it from someone else because I didn't weigh in on it, but I remember thinking, oh, that's profound.
Yes.
But anyways, okay, well, maybe we'll just skip that and you can
No.
hear if it comes
Well, no,
out. But I thought it was interesting. I think so. We expect so much more from work now. But that's a totally sideline conversation.
Well, it can go. And it was actually one of
sorry.
the points I was going to say. It wasn't my next point, but I'll make it my next point. And that was something I really want to encourage my children in that Charlie had. And that was a purpose beyond just career and work. It was something that really embodied who he was. He's like, this literally is who I am. It's what I believe. I'm a Christian. And so I'm going to act like it. And when you actually see somebody act like what they believe, it stands out. Or I shouldn't say that. When they act like what they believe when they're a Christian, when they say they're a Christian, they act like it. I should say, because everybody acts how they believe. And so when you see somebody that says they're a Christian, then acts like it, it stands out. And that's to your point, Katie, this wasn't like a career for Charlie Kirk. This wasn't like a job. It was just, he was going to do this like on one way, like it's
It was
one
like
of those
a
things.
responsibility.
Yeah, it was a responsibility.
He was taking it. Yeah.
And I do think that regardless of what you're doing for work, for provision, right? I think we get all these things convoluted where it's like, well, I need to make money. And you do, as the head of your home, as the provider, you need to take care of those financial basics for your home. Keeping rent paid or paying the mortgage and getting groceries and paying for the medical bills. Like you have to cover those things. But that's not your purpose. I mean, there's purpose in that, but like there's purpose beyond that as well. And I think he really embodied that, where he was going to do this whether or not he was making a lot of money doing it. It's like, if and I don't know his full biography, but it's like, he seems like it's one of those things where if he had to go work a 9 to 5, he would work a 9 to 5 and then go sit on college campuses and do this thing in his spare time. And I think that that's the type of clarity I want my sons to have, where it's like, yeah, money, you do need to figure the money thing out. That is a real thing, but that's not the end of the thing. It's just figuring out the money, where it's like, once you get the money thing figured out, then just the rest doesn't really matter. It's like, no, you need to figure out what you are about, and you have to figure out the money thing along with that. And it's got to be able to support you and what you're called to do. And so, yeah, I know that term calling gets thrown around a lot. I think I want my sons to have that clarity of calling. And the reason that stands out to me, in regards to what you were saying, is often we just let what people call a career embody who they are in general, where like our callings are so much beyond our career. And it's like, man, we are Christians, we are husbands, we are fathers. Like, those are callings. And I think that even with those, if you just focus on those things and you don't try to customize your calling, because everybody wants to have their custom calling. And it's like, well, see, Charlie, this was his custom calling, and that's why he was so fruitful. But I actually think that if we focus on those general callings that every Christian has, and then if you're blessed to be a husband, then every husband has as a Christian husband, and then if you're blessed with children, then every Christian father has, then like that whole custom calling thing really works itself out. It's like you inevitably find yourself doing it when you try to do those other things well, and you actually walk in those things faithfully. And so I do think that that's something I really want to encourage my sons in, is you're not looking for a career in the traditional sense, or what's now a traditional sense. It's like, yeah, you need to provide, absolutely. And that might be through a blue collar, white collar. It might be through owning your own business or working for someone. It might be through a side, having a job in a side hustle. It might be through working 20 hours a week, or it might be through working 100 hours a week. You need to provide for your family. But that financial provision is not who you are. Like, that's not actually the fullness of what God has in store for your work here, and why you are doing what you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What are some of the other things that you wrote down?
Well, something that stood out to me was, I remember hearing Charlie Kirk saying, this kind of plays on that, is the practical changes he made in his life that were so obvious because of the clarity of his calling. And so I remember him saying, like, oh yeah, I stopped drinking because it just made me less effective in everything that I do. It's like, I'm not as good of a husband. I'm not as good of a leader, in my organization. And so it was like this no-brainer for him to eliminate this thing. And I was like, man, how nice would it be if we all had that clarity on our calling as Christians, so that something that's a hindrance, like we read about in Hebrews, it's like, let us run with endurance the race set before us. What does it say? Like shedding, not being entangled, by the sin that so easily entangles us. And so there are things that are sin, or there are things that just straight up entangle us, that might not seem so overtly sinful. It's like, if we're clear on,
that even aren't sinful.
Yeah, I think so.
You know what I mean? They can be very specific things that are specific to you.
Exactly. Yeah, and if we had that clarity, it's like, oh, I see what my goal is. I see what my mission is, or my calling is, and this clearly does not support this. In fact, it might take away from it. It might hinder my mission. Well, that's a no-brainer. I'm going to eliminate this thing. And I think that when I'm honest and I'm having those moments of clarity for what the Lord's put before me, and being a husband and being a father and being a Christian and having a business that I get to own and operate, having a property, like having these things that he's put just in my lap, that he's like, you need to take care of these things. Then actually it's pretty clear some of the things that help and some of the things that hinder. Mm-hmm. And I want my boys to have that clarity, rather than saying, hey, is it wrong to do this thing? Or is it sinful to do this thing? Or can I watch these movies? Can I not watch these movies? Can I listen to this music? Can I not listen to this music? Can I drink this, or can I not drink this? Should we eat these, or should we not eat these? It's like, what's your mission? And then, are these things helpful or not? Are they a hindrance, or are they helpful? And in just some of the few interviews that I listened to around the topic of health and just in regards to this alcohol consumption, it was just like a no brainer. I'm like, man, I want my boys to, and I want myself to have that clarity of whether it's media content or how I spend my time, my diet, my exercise, having clarity on the mission so that I can see what's helpful or what's a hindrance to it.
Yeah, because the spiritual and the physical worlds are so intertwined. And I think that sometimes we get so caught up in one or the other. We get caught up in trying to figure out, okay, what's the sin line? And always asking, well, is it a sin or is it not a sin? Because it's like we're living in a straight up spiritual world with no physical ramifications if it's on the side of not sin versus, like you said, just that clarity of mission and clarity of focus. And what has God called us to? Is this helping or hindering that? And making a decision based off that instead of, does scripture say this is okay or does it not? That's a great line to hold for sure. We don't want to cross that line. But then on the other side of that line in the okay zone, there are things that do hinder us and do not.
Yep.
And it's really easy to cling to things that hinder us, trying to, say, well, it's not biblically incorrect, where it's just not helpful.
Right. Yeah. Couldn't agree more. And exactly. And I think that when you have, and this is the power of heroes and of role models and of inspirations. And again, I'm curious, as to how our listeners handle this, because I think there were times where it felt like having heroes or role models, it was always pushed back against, whether it was from pastors or just, older people in my life that were like, well, they're a fallen person or they're sinful. They've got their shortcomings. Well, they're not perfect. And I don't know ever any point in my life, from being like 6 years old and older, ever thinking that somebody I looked up to was perfect other than Jesus. Like, I think that's a false, I don't know of anybody thinking that, right? Thinking that some other human that they look up to is perfect. It's like, well, I just don't want, people might say, I don't want them to be disappointed when they see their shortcomings. And it's like, well, I guess you don't need to discourage people from admiring their quality, their attributes that truly are admirable. And then this is the other thing too, is, people will say, well, hey, you can't be I've heard this a lot anyways from pastors and just other people. It's like, hey, you can't be like Charlie Kirk. So how do you take what he did and you apply it to your life? And I know what you're saying, right? If your life's so full right now, you can't go to college campuses and debate people and start a huge organization. If you're called right now to motherhood or to fatherhood, I get it. You want to have that same courage in where God's called you to. But we know you can't be that person. Everybody knows you can't be Charlie Kirk. I guess what I'm trying to push back on are all the disclaimers, that people have, where it's like, hey, well, I didn't agree with this guy fully, but it's like, yeah, duh. No human being on the face of the planet did, and nobody thinks you did. Nobody's in fear of thinking you agreed with every single word that this guy said, and nobody's in fear, or you're not in fear. You shouldn't be in fear of somebody thinking that. You're not in danger of that, I should say. And I think that when it comes to our children having heroes and role models, it's like, if they want to be like them, let them try to be like them. Mm-hmm. It'll probably make them a better person. Mm-hmm. And so if there's some person I was like, I want to be like Charlie Kirk, don't be like, well, hey, Charlie was Charlie, you're you. Make sure you look at what you have, your giftings and where you're at. It's like, just let them try to be like Charlie Kirk, and they will probably become a better person. I just speak anecdotally. Luke Rittenauer was my, basketball role model for so many years, and he was a Christian guy, and he was somebody that my parents were okay with me kind of admiring. And I was like, I want to be like Luke Rittenauer. I knew I couldn't be Luke Rittenauer. I knew I couldn't, I could never become him. But I wanted to do the drills that he did. I wanted to hold myself how he held himself. And I think it actually made me better, right? It's not like I was disappointed someday when I realized I could not be Luke Rittenauer.
In basketball, he was a
Yeah,
was he?
exactly. He was a point guard in basketball, and he was like,
Probably everyone knows that, but for like the three of us that don't.
Yeah, sorry. No, he wasn't even that famous. He's like, I thought he was going to be the next John Stockton. John Stockton was another basketball player.
Like, who's John Stockton?
He was more famous than Luke Rinauer, okay?
How can we just say LeBron James?
Yeah, but John Stockton
Michael
would be
Jordan.
another like admirable guy where you're kind of like, hey, yeah, that's a good person. If your son's into basketball, that's actually not bad that they want to be like John Stockton or Luke Rinauer is what I'm saying. And then I could go just through a whole progression of people that I wanted to emulate, different pastors and different musicians, and people that were alive and dead. C.S. Lewis, like, I want to be C.S. I want to be Eric Metaxas. I never said I want to be them, but they were, a hero.
Well, and a couple of the pastors that you wanted to be like did end up falling.
Right.
And
yes.
The ironic thing is that still made you a better person trying to be like them.
Oh yeah. One, I'm not even going to say his name, but I remember thinking I want so badly to be like this guy. And listening to it was like CDs, but getting any CD I could find of his, and going through his workbooks, just his catalogs, everything. And it made me get up earlier. It made me read more. It made me do a lot of things. And, I don't think he's not real reputable now, but the point is there wasn't this fear of, I don't think my parents were like, hey, stop. He's not Jesus, he's flawed. They weren't putting this damper on me trying to pursue being like this person. I
mean, I do think there's two things that definitely attribute to this. One is a theological camp. And I'd say all Protestants, we really try to elevate Jesus by smothering goodness that we see in other people, because there is a real fear there of idolatry. And that if we admire heroes, we are going to be somehow lessening our view of God or putting that in jeopardy if we elevate man too high. Right. So I think in order to do that, we just make sure we just really squash all men, and then can we be sure we aren't elevating them too high? So I think that that's something that we can maybe lean a little too heavily into.
Yes.
Instead of just embrace the heroes. They're heroes of the faith. They're heroes past and present. And we can just lean into admiring, they were made in the image of God, and there is plenty to admire.
Exactly.
And just run with that, knowing that they aren't God. We don't have to make that disclaimer.
Yeah.
God is himself. He's not in danger of being compared with anyone else. Well, his creation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
we could try to do that in the hardness of our heart, but I'm saying with the Holy Spirit inside of us convicting, and I don't know, there's just I'm never going to think someone else is God, I guess.
Yeah. And even in relation to you saying hey, they're created in the image of God, there's something admirable, something else that I don't like. There are people that are just more admirable than others, right?
Yes,
that
absolutely.
are more heroic than others. And so I don't think we need to diminish. And again, I know this is all really current and real time and all those things. I've just heard people being yeah, this is a tragedy that this guy died, but he was just a flawed human like all of us. He was, and it's we just this, if my boys think he is a hero and a legend, that's good. I'm yeah, this is a legendary, heroic person. Hard stop. The disclaimers will come out they will figure those out in the end. Right. And they probably already know it now. They don't think he's Jesus. They don't think he's God. And so if they are inspired by somebody of the faith doing heroic things, then just let them be inspired by that. Yeah. I don't think I need to come in and be well, hey, they've got their shortcomings. If there's a real danger, if it's hey, this guy's a cult leader, or it's hey, you're inspired by this person, they've got bad theology, or hey, you're inspired by this person, they're living immorally, then yeah, that's a different thing. If you're inspired by something that, if your children are being inspired by something that is not, admirable or virtuous. But when there's virtuous things that people are inspired by, it's fuel that fire, fuel that flame.
I think that there was, I don't remember when this happened for me, but there was a real movement with biblical characters to really bring out their flaws, to heighten, hey, you remember David, he did that sin with Bathsheba and he's clearly fallen. Don't don't think he's too heroic.
Sure. Yeah. Noah got drunk and, like,
yeah, exactly. Noah had his issues, like going through Moses struck the rock.
Yes.
Like, and it's like, no, these are incredible men of faith.
Right.
Like they are worthy to be admired, to try to be emulated, to be elevated, and to try to be like. And this trying to, I don't know, tarnish everybody else in a way that makes us all evil, even.
Right.
Not evil. And we are all evil.
Yeah,
we are evenly evil. Exactly. Instead of acknowledging that there are people who are more righteous than other people.
They've literally given their physical life.
Yes.
For the
And
gospel.
I say that knowing that, yes, positionally, we are all righteous before God and that his blood has covered us, right, and made us righteous before him. But then in the sanctification process, there's a lot of different language here that, we could potentially get confused on, but the maturation process, there are straight up people who are more mature, more righteous, and more holy believers.
In their conduct
and
how they live their life.
Just in every way.
Yeah.
And they are worthy to be
admired
and learn from. And so I think that there's sometimes nowhere. Like, I think the Lord knew that he created us wanting heroes, and looking to Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, is wonderful. And he is all encompassing. Like, we can look to Jesus, but he has given us physical leaders and physical people to admire outside of just him and what he has done. That is, yes, non-comparable to anyone else and what any human will do. But within his creation, there is still much to be admired. And I believe that is a gift from him to us and not something we need to fear. I also think this is something that in more modern history and as our country in America, there's been a big movement to tarnish political heroes.
Yes. And religious heroes.
Yes. But I would say this is just a lack of trying to snuff out patriotism. And so, going into Thomas Jefferson, George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, like mining the dirt of their humanity and wanting to bring that to light and to really just tarnish our nation. Yep. And I just think of that when it comes to Charlie Kirk. It's just, I think we are free to just admire everything heroic about him and to want to be like him and want to push forward that mission in our country and not try to write history in a negative sense.
Yes.
Going forward. Because obviously humans do things imperfectly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's like we're all speaking in the context of being humans. It's like we get that. We get the context here.
Like those who don't, I don't know.
Right. Anyways, folks, and thanks for listening. We're going to wrap this thing up. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.